Game 6 tonight. The Pacers' second chance in this series to close out the Milwaukee Bucks. What will it take from an adjustments perspective, from a big picture perspective, from the Pacers playing their style perspective, and one player specifically, do the Pacers need to get going? We're getting to all that today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Thursday. It's time for Game 6, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we're diving into all things Game 6, looking ahead at the now biggest game of the series, which was the biggest since Game 5, which was the biggest since Game 4. You get the picture. Rick Carlisle's on it. They keep becoming more important and more difficult for both teams every single game. But this one is critical as it gets for the Pacers for every reason that Game 5 was critical, but guaranteed last home game of the series for the Pacers. Who knows about Giannis and Dame's status going forward, but they're both currently, as of me speaking, right this second, listed as doubtful for Game 6, right? Achilles injuries like the one Dame has can linger for a while. Giannis, of course, hasn't played in the series. If they don't play, and it's the Pacers' last home game, it literally does not get to be a better chance to close out a series than those factors aligning. This is as big as it gets for the Pacers and a chance for them to win their first series in a decade. Yes, it will be a huge deal. And yes, everybody rooting for the Bucks will say, injuries, but no one remembers, or no one ever talks about the Nets injuries from when the Bucks beat them all those years ago. People remember the result, and the Pacers need to get the result tonight, regardless of what it takes. We're going to talk about what it takes, from adjustments to a player I think needs to find a groove or be better, to stats that have defined some of the Bucks' recent success that the Pacers need to figure out. We will start with adjustments, going a little deeper on stuff that I talked about after Game 5. Game 5, the second biggest adjustment game of this series to me. Game 2 was first. Game 2 is when the Bucks went zone for the first time during the McConnell lineups. It's when the Pacers went to 8 for, I believe, the only time in the series they truly went 8 for a whole game. It was also the Pacers changed up their offensive approach. They were much speedier. Their offensive attacks were just different. They were more ready. They went with Top and Siakam for the first time. They were just more ready for that game. And since then, it's been a lot more incremental. Game 5 changed that. The Bucks went much more veteran full. They started switching more. They changed who was guarding who in a major way. Biggest adjustment game. The Pacers were full court pressing at times. They continue to tinker with their rotation in some ways that were justified at the time, in most ways that did not work at all. So now it's time to respond to what the Bucks did, and usually the losing team is the one that is required to make the bigger adjustments, hence why the Bucks made huge ones in Game 5 and the Pacers made huge ones in Game 2. Let's start with the switching. That is, to me, the biggest thing that was different in Game 5. The matchup part of it is a factor, and the Bucks just switching more in general is a factor. For those of you who didn't see it or didn't hear me talk about it yesterday, or just want a refresher, one thing the Bucks did is they changed up the matchups in the starters versus starters. Beverly's still on Haliburton, but Brooke Lopez was on Aaron Nesmith. Chris Middleton was on Myles Turner. Portis still on Pascal Siakam. And then Malik Beasley on Andrew Nembhard. And the reason for that is, in the first 4 games, one of the Pacers' front court players, whoever is being guarded by Brooke Lopez, is very frequently involved in the action. And the players had scored almost 30 points. Siakam in the first 2 games did. Turner was at 29 in games 3 and 4. Clearly, the Pacers found success with that. And that's not a knock on Brooke Lopez. It's a very hard role. Both of them are versatily skilled front court players. So by changing that up, Aaron Nesmith, not typically someone the Pacers use as a screener, and they found more success, the Bucks did, with Middleton being more mobile and able to switch onto a ball handler if Myles Turner sets a screen. And Portis has been better of the Bucks front court in those moments as well, which is why he started the series the way he did. So all that together really limited the Pacers. They really had to think. The other thing they did is they just switched a lot, right? In general, pick and roll switch, like size switch. make it harder for the Pacers to just drive, make them have to reset. Even if the matchup's weird, just do it. Make them think, even if maybe it is a disadvantage for just a second. And so what happens when that happens is, of course, switching means you're cutting stuff off easier, but you're at times putting yourself in worse matchups. What it did is, and Tyrese Haliburton nailed it, he said the word stagnant. He thought the Pacers were stagnant. If you dig into the pace numbers from this series, I talked about this a little bit. I believe after game 4, the game 5 was the slowest by far. The Bucks offensive pace, so the seconds they took per offensive possession, their only slower game than game 5 was game 2, which they lost. And that was on the offensive end. So they're taking their time, getting the shots they want. On defense, their slowest defensive pace game of the series was game 5. Almost 15 seconds per Pacers possession. They were only over 14 one time before, which was game 3. And the Bucks almost stole that game in Indy. So the slower pace defensively is good for the Bucks. And how they get the Pacers to slow down is exactly what I just described. They switch, and then the Pacers retreat for a second and go, okay, who's on who now? And what do we need to do to attack it? Who needs to be the screener, or how do we get to swing it, or who can just get by their guy? And that's all well and good to assess a situation. The problem is between pressing, between crisp defensive rotations, it took too long for the Pacers to get into that kind of stuff, hence the slow pace. And so not only is their possession slow to figure out where they can attack, where the mismatch is coming from, but they couldn't get into a second action, or they couldn't get into a mismatch hunt that made sense. They couldn't do a lot of stuff that was productive in that way, right? So what they need to do, or find a way to do, is just get started faster, right? The 20 seconds across half court rule needs to be applied if the Bucks continue to switch, because then let's say the first thing that happens is a Haliburton Turner pick and roll, and all of a sudden Chris Middleton's on Haliburton and Beverly's on Turner. Well, maybe you want to just post up Turner right away. Maybe you don't. Maybe you now want to do a different switch to get Chris Middleton off of Haliburton and get someone else onto Haliburton. So then you bring up Aaron Nesmith to do a ghost screen, and then Middleton's on Nesmith, which has been the case a lot, and now it's Haliburton on Lopez, and you could just keep going from there. But you can't get to that second screen without doing the first one quicker, so you have time to do something. If you don't have time, it's very easy for the Bucks to slow it down. They know how much time is on the shot clock. They know how many guys can actually shoot it. You have to get to it quicker if you're the Pacers, if you want to get into action number 2 and make a switching defense or a rotating defense, whatever. Make them have to be the team reacting, right? I think that a lot about basketball as like a principle of a team playing well is whichever team is forcing the other team to react is doing better, right? If you're a really aggressive defense and you're forcing the offense to react to you, they're going to be slower. They're going to be not playing their way. That's generally good. Same goes the other way around. If you're the offense playing in a way that makes the defense react to you, you're generally going to get good shots throughout a game. The way to do that for the Pacers has been all season and is in this series playing faster. So not only does it let them get to the second part of whatever action they're doing quicker or more often, even just more possessions where that's happening. It also means, let's say something goes wrong or even goes right, but it's just favorable on the very first switch, and there's a mismatch. Myles Turner has Patrick Beverly on him, like I just said, or Siakam has a guard on him, or Siakam has Brook Lopez on him. They can go to that quicker. They know it's a thing, right? They can attack it. If they don't get a good shot from it, they can reset and go again. But just knowing where the mismatch is or how the Bucks are switching, figuring it out earlier in the possession, all that kind of stuff has just immense value, right? So my first key for game 6 for the Pacers, especially if the Bucks continue to switch, is get into their possessions early. I bet the Bucks pair the switching with full court pressure to try to get the Pacers out. Like I bet Andrew Nembhard ends up taking the ball across half court a lot just because he's going to have to come bail out Haliburton on inbounds. And so I think that is something the Pacers need to do. Get into stuff early. Gives you more time. It lets you attack second switches. It lets you mismatch hunt. I think that is really important. The other thing that I think it matters is if there's possessions like there were in game 5 where the possession starts, like I've been talking a lot about the starters specifically and how the matchup shook out in that way. But if there's possessions where Danilo Gallinari starts on Siakam, get him the ball. Get him the ball. Same with Myles Turner and someone smaller than him, or Tyrese Haliburton with a big on him that he can get by. They had a lot of times where that was the case, and they didn't identify it quick enough. Like, not only do they need a mismatch hunt, they need to get to that stuff faster. See it. Don't think about it. Don't call for a screen. Don't try to yes, attacking Danilo Gallinari has been helpful for them, but just go for it, right? Attack that and make the defense double team or make the defense overhelp or just make something happen in that way instead of just one forced switch and then, there's only 8 on the shot clock. We better get to something else. And we have to shoot. We only have 5 seconds and only 2 guys are even close enough to the plate to actually shoot because we took too long. That can't happen again. And so it's up to the Pacers to be more deliberate. I think Tyrese Haliburton's word was perfect. They were stagnant, right? They were stagnant. They weren't playing like themselves. They want to play with pace. They want to play with tempo. And they want to play random. They want to play randomly. They've talked about that all season. They can't do any of that unless they start quicker and are snappy. And I'm snapping to hopefully drive home the point of what I'm trying to say. That's adjustment number 1 for the Pacers. Play more like the Pacers. Be speedy. Be quick. Attack. Don't be the team reacting. Make the Bucks react to you. Plenty more of adjustments and stats and numbers to dive into from Game 5 that the Pacers need to get going on in Game 6. We'll talk about that stuff in just a second. Before we get to any of it, though, we need to talk about Game Time, the best way to buy tickets, and now an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off time. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from receipt, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets and tickets to whatever event you're going to. Sports, comedy, theater, whatever, they've got it. I used it in New York City to go watch the New York Liberty play last summer when the Dallas Wings were in NYC. I got them the day of. I got tickets the day of the game. I could see exactly what my view was. I like sitting on the corner in the lowest bowl. I think those are my favorite seats. Perfect. It was a spot-on view. Lowest price guarantee gave me confidence. They have that low price guarantee. They'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets in the same section. They have an event cancellation protection. The price you see is the price you get. There's no hidden fees. It's perfect. It is the perfect experience. No guesswork. You'll see exactly what you need everywhere. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day for your second listen. Check out Locked On Bucks. Hear what they're saying about Game 5. Can the Bucks keep it rolling to Game 6? Can the Bucks keep going in a way that matters for their stars? Will Dame play? Will Giannis play? That would change the series and make my adjustments moot because then the Pacers have to focus on a totally different Bucks team. Look, here's the other thing about that. The Bucks have to be cognizant. It's not like just having Giannis or Dame. They have to be good. If it's 80% of Giannis and Dame, that's still valuable. If it's 70%, 60%, when does it hit the number where it's more valuable to rest them? And when does it hit the number where you'd rather focus on their long-term health? It's not just about their situation in the series with their backs against the wall, and they just won without both of them. So we'll see. Doubtful supposedly means there's only a 1 in 4 chance a player's going to play or less. I forget the exact reasoning for the questionable, doubtful, probable designations. But Giannis has been doubtful every game. We'll see. But Dame has only been doubtful since his injury in Game 3. Again, we'll see for Game 6. If neither of them play, it's not a must-win for the Pacers. It's pretty close. Let's continue here talking about adjustments for the Pacers. Their fast break numbers and transition numbers continue, along with their points in the paint, to really just jump out at me all the time. Their last game so here's the Pacers by game. This is their most to least fast break. Actually, let's just go in chronological order. Here are the Pacers' fast break points by game in this series. 12, 14, 12, 7, 5. 5, if you go back to the regular season, would be their second lowest game the whole year. The only time they were lower is when they played Denver in January, right after Siakam trade, they had 4. Every other game, they had 5 or more. So that's already, if you include the in-season tournament finals and 5 playoff games, out of 88 games, they've been at that number 3 times. That's bad, right? They lost all 3 of those games. That number has to be higher, but 7's also bad. They were at 7 or fewer only 6 times during the regular season. They only won 2 of those games, right? Fast break points are good. That generally means you're getting a stop or you're getting a rebound and finding ways to get down the floor. And the Bucks, to their credit, have been better at transition defense, but the Pacers need to play faster. Going back to the original point, get up the floor. Get up the floor. That's huge for them. And that's been a problem for them in this series. And that goes back to the pace argument that I just talked about. So the transition numbers haven't been there for the Pacers in a way that they have been not only throughout the regular season, but just in general. When they had high transition points in a game, they generally did pretty well. I mean, the middle ground is like the sweet spot because that means you're defending pretty well for a whole game, but you're not running too much, right? It doesn't matter. But they were at the middle ground for games 2 and 3. So they just can't be as slow as they have been. They've got to get in transition more. Be the Pacers. They've got to be the Pacers, not whoever they were in game 5. Points in the paint has been fascinating in this series as well. Credit to both teams for their points in the paint defense a lot of the times in this series. But here are the Pacers' points in the paint numbers chronologically in the series. 40, 52, 44, 38 in game 4. Incredible that they won that game with their shooting. And then 42 in game 5. Their highest is 52, but 4 out of 5 at 44 or lower. During the regular season, the Pacers were only below 44 times. And if they were below 44, they won twice in 7 games. They went 2 and 5. And they were at 44 or lower. I can't count fast enough, but something like a dozen times. Like, that's in the very much the lower end of what they can do. And they've done that 4 of the 5 games. So the Bucks are doing something well. And the answer is Brook Lopez is very good. But they're cutting off the rim. They're doing a good job of keeping the Pacers out of there, both with who's back and with good point of attack defense. And so for the Pacers, sometimes it's been their jump shooting, like it was in game 4. Sometimes it's been their general offensive effectiveness via a big man, like Myles Turner or Pascal Siakam. But they have got to find a way to get into the paint more in some way, even if that doesn't mean necessarily scoring at the basket. Like, moving the ball from there to get other shots is valuable. Now, the Pacers have done well slowing the Bucks fast breaks. The Bucks fast break points by game is 7, 5, 4, 5, and 11. Big increase there. In game 5, that's impressive. They've kept the Bucks out of the paint until game 5. Also impressive. That was the Bucks' first time at 50 points in the paint. So not only are these numbers critical for the Pacers offensively, right? Run and get into the paint. That's when the Pacers are at their best. They also need to prevent the Bucks from doing these things. And these aren't like huge adjustment things. This is something I asked Rick Carlisle before the series about, how much do the Pacers focus on themselves versus focusing on what the Bucks do in that week they had between the regular season and the playoffs. He said a lot of teams, are trying to do the same things. Stop easy baskets at the rim, stop threes, run. And so that is clearly a theme the Pacers need to think about. Running, getting into the paint, and preventing the Bucks from doing so. Very simple, but that is stuff that the Pacers need to get back to. Okay, a couple other little notes. I've been bluing all the adjustments that I take notes for in every game. I'm going to run through a couple more from game 5 and react to them, or at least put in my notes what I talked about. The Pacers changing. McDermott's played 2 games in a row now in the series. He was a positive in terms of plus minus in game 4, and he was a negative in game 5. He made a 3 in both of those games. The reason, let me rephrase that. I haven't asked, but my interpretation watching the games of the reason he's playing is, especially in the first half, McConnell comes in, Bucks immediately go zone. Right? There are gaps in that. He can get to them. He has during the regular season. McDermott's a zone buster when the shot's falling, especially, and that's happened. In game 4, the Bucks stuck with that zone a little longer, and the starters came in and tore it up. In game 5, they went away from it. They started the second quarter in man, and McDermott all of a sudden don't want him out there. If you're the Pacers, he was -4 in that game. So I think McDermott can only play if the Bucks play zone, and if they go man more in game 6 because they want to switch more and keep ironing out that defensive scheme that's working really well, or they want to keep gooking up the matchups, just stuff that throws the Pacers off. I don't think you'll see McDermott in game 6 as a result, unless the Bucks go zone a lot against McConnell. But McConnell has not been that effective. He's actually a player we will be talking about later. Something else that happened in game 5 that I liked, the Pacers were pressing a little more. Get up on the Bucks, make it harder for them to get across half court and play fast. The Bucks still scored like crazy in the half court, so it didn't actually change too much. But I like that from the Pacers, especially if they have one ball handler. It was just Patrick Beverley. Make him work. He had a good game. Can he do that again and again and again? Maybe. He had a really nice double-double. Was one of the best guards in game 5. Can he do it again? Again, maybe. If he does, hats off to him. But I'd rather, if I'm the Pacers, bet on my pressure, making it tough for him to do that once again. A lot of the next couple I've gotten to already. Okay, floaters. This is something I really wanted to get to. This might be the thing that I'm the most interested in, just statistically and tactically for the Bucks. They have been really good in floater range all series. And that is a tough thing to swallow for the Pacers because that is theoretically the shot you live with as a defense. You don't want your opponent to get to the rim, right? You're cutting off the rim, you're dropping back, You're ready to stop stuff around the basket. You also don't want your opponent to get easy threes. So if you have to close out hard and let the guy drive in a little bit to prevent the three that might be open, you have to close out really hard. That's everybody in the league, right? So that is the stuff you're trying to cut off. That naturally entices mid-range shots and floaters. If teams are good at making open ones, they can win games. We saw that with the Suns 49 times this season, for example, right? The Bucks have been on fire from floater range in the postseason. Their frequency has been interesting. So first of all, game 5, I talked about this after. Now it's officially in short mid-range field goal percentage for the Bucks in game 5, 60%, the highest they've had in the series. And in fact, they've gotten better every game from that range. But I think that's been a really interesting dynamic for them, is how well they've been putting those in the basket. In the regular season, hitting 60% was like a big deal for them. It didn't happen all that often. It happened exactly 9 times, to be clear. Oh, I clicked a button and that went away. It's less than 9. It did not happen very often for the Bucks during the regular season, but it helped them win a game. Do the Pacers say, you know what, do it again, right? You did it 1/9 of your regular season games. You happen to beat us with it. Do it again. They didn't hit 60 in any of the first 4 games from short mid-range, but they did get pretty high in the 50s in game 4 also. And I have said, I thought the Pacers didn't play very well in game 4, but they made a lot of threes, so it didn't matter, right? And their frequency of short mid-rangers has gone up these last 2 games quite a bit. It was under 1/4 of their shots in the first 3 games. Now it's closer to 1/3. So maybe they're good at them and they're just willing to live with them, and they're going to keep trying to get to that shot. But I mean, very, very rarely in the regular season for the Bucks did they get to this kind of volume, where it's nearly 1/3 of their shots. Like the last 2 games for the Bucks in this series would be 2 of their top 6 short mid-range frequency games in the regular season. So this is kind of new for them. The Pacers are getting shots that they would want. And this is 4 to 14 feet is what the stat site I use to track this says is short mid-range. And so 4 feet is like, yeah, that's an at the rim shot, depending on the player. But in general, floater range shots, you can look at a shot chart. I said that after the last one. Look at the shot chart. You'll see it, right? Where the Bucks are hitting these shots from. Maybe they're just awesome at them in this series. Maybe that's a dynamic that really changes how the Pacers have to defend, how much they have to jump out on these drives. But then you get cooked at the rim. All this to say, maybe if I'm the Pacers, I'm like, okay, good job. Do it again. Make those again. And if the Bucks do, then you have to be better at a lot of other stuff. If you're the Pacers, you're taking the ball to the net, so your offense has to be better. Maybe they don't. Maybe they make 50% of them. But if at the volume they're taking, 1/3 of their shot attempts, right? That's a lot of shots in a game, right? If that percentage comes down, you're talking about 10, 12 points. That's a big deal. So that's something I'll be looking for, and something that's been very standoutish to me is the Pacers, or excuse me, the Bucks just drilling them from that range. Let's finish this up talking a little bit about McConnell, ways the Pacers can help him, and 2 notes things for the Pacers as we close out today's Game 6 preview. Before we do any of that, though, let's talk Monopoly Go. We're off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play, Tony. You've already talked about that a lot this week, but there's just so much good stuff to get to in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get, like unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. I'm a big taunting guy when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day. Constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games, like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on the Google Play or App Store. Game on. One more segment here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Locked On Mavs for your second listen. They did win Game 5 in that epic Mavs-Clippers series. Whew. That's a great series. It's getting overshadowed because Sixers-Knicks is like the greatest first-round series ever, but that's a really good series too. Blowout Game 5. Credit to the Mavs. Credit to a hobbled Luka Doncic for an incredible game. Nick Angst had more on the Dallas Mavericks, who are 1 win away from knocking out the Clippers. And man, would Mavs Thunder be fun. Second round's going to be awesome. Okay, let's talk about TJ McConnell. Really not, look, his limitations are clearly tougher to game plan with in the postseason. No doubt. That's been the case his whole career. I thought he'd be better than this, though, to the point that he has one game shooting above 38.5%. Like, I thought he'd be better than that in the series. That was game 3, and that was also his best second best plus minus game of the season. He was 3 for 6 that night. If you just look at raw plus minus, it never is the perfect way to tell the full story of how a player is playing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. But McConnell here are McConnell's 5 games of the series in plus minus. Game 1, minus 13. Game 2, plus 5. Game 3, minus 3. Game 4, minus 3. Game 5, minus 18. If he is better than minus 4, they've won, right? And the 2 games he was below minus 4, he was way below it. And the bench hasn't been good in general, right? They have not had consistent performances from anybody except for Ben Shepherd, who's been awesome in this series, right? Can they get McConnell going at all, especially with Haliburton's minutes changing a bit? Who knows if that's because of his back or whatever, but him getting going at all, I think would be huge for the Pacers, but it's hard to do. It's really easy to lock in on him. He's not hitting the threes. He is 1 for 10 from deep in the series. That's not good, right? You don't need to be a rocket scientist for that. In general, for the series, he'd be 16 for 36 on twos, right? That's not that much better. That's still below 50%. That was what he was killing late in the regular season. How can they get him going? What is his best trait he can offer the Pacers? Well, if you keep looking back through his game log, the 2 games he was the best, at least in terms of plus minus and effectiveness, were games 2 and 3. He took 6 shots in both those games. In the other 3 games, he took 10, 10, and 11. 13, 10, and 11. They won the game he took 11. They lost the game he took 10 and 13. I don't know that it's just his blanket statement is saying TJ McConnell should not shoot as much, but he probably should not shoot 10 times. Look, the Bucks are just locked into what he can do, right? And that's a credit to them, but it's a lot harder for him to just wiggle free for these 6-footers over and over against a team that knows how he gets open, that knows how he gets into the lane, and is prepared for him to rise up. Like I've talked about it a million times, but Brook Lopez just absolutely swatted one of his shots in the first game. And McConnell made his move, and he got to his normal spot, and he faded away over his defender and got the shot over his defender, something that he did all regular season long. But Brook Lopez is like, great, I'm ready for this. See ya. Bye, goodbye shot. So if a team is ready for that, it's a lot harder for that to work. They're going zone against him a lot, which really gunks up what the Pacers can do. I think McConnell needs to take somewhere between 6 and 8 shots. I think that is big for him. If he's going to be out there, though, it sounds weird to say, but he has to have the ball, right? If he's only 1 for 10 from deep, he's got to have the ball. And that's why I think him and Siakam was something I thought they'd go to more as a combo after game 3. Remember, I talked about that with Adam, just having another ball handler with him. But, without Haliburton shooting, it's harder for him to be a spacer. I just think it makes more sense to go McConnell Siakam than McConnell Haliburton in the series. But either way, whatever it takes for them to have McConnell be more effective with the ball and not shoot so poorly, that has to happen. Like that has been, I didn't expect McConnell to be at regular season level in the series, but I thought he'd be better than he has been. And that has been a trouble for the Pacers. Their bench has not been good at all. And I thought that would be a weapon for them in this postseason setting. And I'm a big fan of what McConnell can do and what he did at the end of the regular season. It's fun to see players who have a unique style. He's very talented. He can get to the rim better than maybe anyone on the team. But if he can't finish the plays there, isn't causing as much panic and rotation as he did during the regular season, he's got to tweak what he can do or how he can be effective. He does get into the teeth of that zone sometimes. Perhaps that's where his shots should come from. But everything else, I think he needs to keep it moving, make it happen. Stars are out. If they are for the Bucks, Pacers just need to win, right? They just need to win. They need to find a way, whether that's from McConnell, whether that's from adjusting to the Bucks defense, whether that's from a star for the Pacers getting going. One of Siakam, Turner, Haliburton needs to step up once again. They got to win. They've just got to do it. You don't want a game 7. You don't want to open up the chances of those guys returning. It's a huge game tonight. Let's close out with 2 other notes. One, the NBA released the finalists for all the major awards. In fact, they've already announced, I think, 4 or 5 winners. Pacers have no finalists for any of these. They did not get exec or coach of the year either, which they don't, or teammate of the year, which they don't announce all the finalists for everything. So don't expect the Pacers to win any awards this year, but you've seen a lot of the voting come through. Nesmith was on most improved. McConnell was on 6th man. Pritchard was on executive. Carlisle's on coach of the year. So I'll keep sharing the ballots as they come out. But Pacers, no finals. They're not going to have any winners. All NBA is the one they care about the most, especially with Haliburton's inclusion. The other thing, I alluded to this before it happened. Now it actually has happened. The Pacers draft pick spot is set. Where they're going to pick is set. The tiebreakers are done. The Pelicans lost their tiebreaker, so the Pacers get the Pelicans second rounder. They'll send the Bucks one to the Warriors. So the Pacers have 3 draft picks this year. They have pick 36, pick 49, and pick 50. Their own first rounder belongs, of course, to the Raptors. Their own second rounder belongs to the Clippers. So 36, 49, and 50 is the spot for the Pacers. And that is the end of the news segment. Tomorrow, of course, talking game 6, perhaps with a guest. We'll see. Whatever happens, win or loss, we'll break it down as soon as I can after the game. Looking forward to it. It'll be fun to be in Cambridge once again. Hopefully not for the last time of the season because I like being there and watching basketball games, and it's very convenient. But we'll see how it goes. And we'll have all the coverage right here on Locked On Pacers for you tomorrow and into the weekend. If there's a game 7, we'll be ready for that. If they are moving on to play either the Knicks or the Sixers, we'll be ready for that. You'll get it all here on Locked On Pacers and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed today's show. I'm on Twitter at Tony R. East, and the show is there at Locked On Pacers. Till tomorrow, everybody, have a wonderful day. We'll see you after game 6.